Everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will be discussing Connecticut's two favorite senators and how they're both super anti-2A. Before I get too deep into the video, I just want to say down in the description below always is a link for the merch store. And today is day 4 of voting for the Gundies. So down also in that description will be a link to vote for this channel, me, to become the micro influencer of the year, which is super important, guys. So get down in there after this video and vote. During the whole recording of this video, I will be sipping on some Jack Daniel's coffee, so all the little help to the channel will help. It helps provide coffee for me. All right, cheapest way to support the channel always is just like this video, share it with everybody you know, and if you haven't already, just subscribe to the channel and toggle that notification bell. This way you're always notified anytime I do a new video or I do one of our lives on a Saturday night. All right, so what are we talking about? So earlier, like last week, right around November 21st, we were all gearing up for Thanksgiving. And this is coming right from Chris Murphy's website. It is a press release. I did see it in a few other areas, like on, I think the Hill, Yahoo News had it and all that. What are we talking about? Right here. This is November 21st. I'll have a link also down below, just so you guys can go read it in its entirety and the buffoonery that these morons keep doing. All right. It says U.S. Senator Chris Murphy, alongside Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, and Dick Blumenthal, led by 45 senators, in reintroducing the Background Check Expansion Act to expand federal background checks for all gun sales. Although more than 90% of Americans support comprehensive background checks under the current federal law, unlicensed or private sellers are not required to conduct a background check prior to transferring a firearm. Research indicates that as many as a quarter of all gun sales in the United States may occur without a background check. U.S. Representative Mike Thompson, a Democrat from California, and Brian Fitzpatrick, a Republican from Pennsylvania, introduced companion legislation in the U.S. House of Representatives. So let's get into it. Okay, so here in Connecticut, no matter what transfer we do, you have to have a background check because of the stupid DPS-3, and we'll get a little deeper into it. But if you live out in like rural Idaho, Oklahoma, Tennessee, just one of the Rust Belt, Bible Belt states, somewhere in the interior of the country, then when you purchase a firearm, you go to your gun store, you fill out your 4473, and you purchase your gun. Could be simply, you go in, 4473, boom, you walk out with this. Not a problem. Now that 4473 sits at that FFL. And that is the only form that you need to fill out. There are no extra forms like we have here in Connecticut. Now that form will sit at the FFL the entirety of that FFL's business life, or for 25 years when they have then the option to send it into the ATF. Now if the FFL goes out of business before then they have to send that 4473 to the ATF. Then the ATF will digitize it into a non-searchable database for their records. Non-searchable my ass. You know damn well they can go through it and search just like they do here in Connecticut. All right, it goes on to say the Background Check Expansion Act will require background checks for the sale or transfer of all firearms. This requirement extends to all unlicensed sellers, whether they do business online, at gun shows, or out of their home. Exceptions to the Background Check Expansion Act include transfers between law enforcement officers, temporarily loaning firearms for hunting or sporting events, providing firearms as gifts to immediate family members, and transferring a firearm as a part of an inheritance, or temporarily transferring a firearm for immediate self-defense. Okay, let's break that down. Of course, cops are always, They're above us. They don't need to follow the same law. So they're exempt from this. Okay, they always do that. Any gun law they pass. Temporary loaning a firearm. Yeah, you're going hunting and you need to borrow a hunting rifle, I can loan you one. Sporting events. That would be like, I don't know, a gun match or something like that. Your gun might break, you need to borrow mine, something like that. Providing a firearm as a gift to immediate family members. Yeah, I mean, that technically could be construed as a straw purchase, but what they're talking about, I would assume, would be I purchase a firearm and I gift it to Mrs. Guru. Or like when my kids were younger and we bought them guns for Christmas or their birthdays, things like that. Transferring a firearm as a part of inheritance. Connecticut has its own process, but yeah, that is a lump bulk transfer. And then temporarily transferring a firearm for immediate self-defense. Temporarily transferring a firearm for immediate self-defense. That's like I just give you a gun to shoot the bad guy because we're all going to die otherwise. But think about it. It's like, oh my God, I'm mortally wounded. Here's my gun. Save us all. Wait, we got to do a background check before I hand you that gun. And we're just all going to die. I don't know why that's in there. Okay. Goes on to say that 90% of all Americans, including an overwhelming majority of gun owners, I find that preposterous, support a universal background check system, said Murphy. Okay, I'm going to get right there. Universal background checks. That means any gun transfer, you've got to do the background check. There's only one way to enforce something like that, and that is to create a gun registry, which is exactly what we have in Connecticut. Even though the state literally will tell you to your face, we don't have a registry, literally gaslighting us. When you buy a gun, and I've said this ad nauseam, you fill out a DPS-3. The FFL gets a copy, you get a copy, your local PD gets a copy, and the state police get a copy. So basically, everybody knows you just purchased a gun, the serial number, type of gun, its caliber, the whole 9 yards. It's like a title. We know that it's your gun. Now, if you want to sell it or transfer it, you have to go back to the FFL and you have to go through the whole thing. They have to take it in. There's a transfer number, and then the person you're selling it to has to then do their 4473, and there's a transfer fee for it coming back out from the FFL, and there's a whole new DPS-3 filled out. You got a new DPS-3 that says it's no longer yours, and there's another DPS-3 for the other individual that says it is now theirs. And of course, it goes to them, the FFL, local PD, and state police. And that's how the transfer works. That's a universal background check system. It's the only way to ensure that we actually do that. Now, when you look at more rural areas, there are places in the United States where you may have two people live within a couple of miles of each other, and they're friends, and they're what we call neighbors. And I might have 3 or 4 hunting rifles, and my neighbor, who lives maybe 3-4 miles away, might have, say, a coyote problem on their land, and they want to get rid of them, but he doesn't or she doesn't have the proper rifle that you would use, something powerful enough to drop a coyote, which just humor me on this one. If I have a bunch of them and I'm willing to let one go for, obviously I'm selling it for a fee, then in these rural areas, especially if an FFL is like 2-3 hours away from us, I know they're not a prohibited person because it's illegal for me to give a gun to a prohibited person. So I must know they're not a prohibited person. In those instances, I could then just sell them the gun, give it to them, and it's over and done with. I know they're not a prohibited person, as in they're not a felon. And if anything were ever to go wrong and the ATF were to show up, and they're like, hey, according to this 4473, you're the one that bought this gun. And you'd be like, nah, I sold it. Here's a receipt saying I sold it to so-and-so. And that's good enough. Not here, obviously, in Connecticut or any other state that has some sort of universal background check system. Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, Washington, California, Illinois, those blue states, basically. As it goes on to say, as Trump endangers lives by getting rid of successful bipartisan programs that brought down gun violence rates, We're working to keep guns away from violent criminals and make communities safer. My man, if they are a violent criminal, they are not going into an FFL to buy a gun. They are usually stealing their guns or buying them on the streets, some sort of black market. And it's usually going to be a stolen gun, whether it be stolen from an FFL or a home. Criminals are not doing the things right because they're criminals. Their very nature means they break the law. It also says a few years ago, the Senate proved we could enact common sense gun reform by passage of a bipartisan Safer Communities Act, but we must go further, said Leader Schumer. A vast majority of Americans support background checks, and it's nothing but obedience to the gun lobby and special interests to continue to block the will of the people. As the author of the original Brady Bill, I have dedicated my career to fighting tooth and nail in the advance of gun safety legislation. Now, he's just straight up anti-2A. The legislation is a vital, broadly supported, and long overdue step in the right direction and will save countless lives in our country from the scourge of gun violence. I hate to tell you this, Mr. Schumer, but law-abiding citizens are not the problem. It is the illegal hood boogers doing hood booger stuff. It goes on to say, it is too easy for those prohibited by law to receive guns under their current system. Most Americans support the use of a background check, yet not all gun sales in this country will require them. Congress needs to address the ongoing reality. There's far too many guns on our streets, according to Durbin. The Background Expansion Act is a long overdue law. Listen, there's a lot more to this to read through, and it talks about gun violence prevention organizations and how children deserve to grow up and nonviolent. None of this is going to stop criminals from doing criminal things. Okay, fine. Everyone needs to get a background check. Great. Yeah, the criminals still aren't getting their background checks. Again, they're getting these guns illegally. So your gun crimes are not going to go down. Hood boogers are still going to do hood booger things. That's just the way it is. To me, all of this is just a gun grab. Now, as long as Republicans control the Senate, Congress, and the White House, I doubt this bill is going to go anywhere. And when they're talking about how 90% of gun owners support this, it's also a skewed statistic. They talk about the gun show loopholes. That's not a thing. If you've ever gone to an actual gun show, if you're going to purchase a firearm from these gun shows, 99.999% of the people there are FFLs. And if they're selling you anything, you will be required to fill out a 4473 and go through the NICS system. That's the way it is. Nobody at a damn gun show is just selling guns willy-nilly to anybody out there. They are going to cover their own rear ends by doing the 4473. It's just the way it is. But no, they lie and they obscure the truth and they make it sound like it's way worse than it is. So I am totally against this. Again, it will be linked down in the description below for you to read in its entirety. It is tons of stuff. It even has a link for the full text of the bill. But, of course, this is supported by John Feinblatt, the president of Everytown for Gun Safety. So obviously the anti-gunners are all about this. They're like, rah, 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 let's do this. Thus we know it's bad for us. All right, that's all I have for you guys in this video. I'm going to go back to drinking my delicious Jack Daniel's coffee. Don't forget, down in that description is going to be a link to vote for me for Micro Influencer of the Year for the Gundy Awards, which take place in January in Vegas during SHOT Show. So don't forget, go vote. Vote for me, and then you can go through the other categories and vote for your favorite gun tuber out there. All right, that's all I have for you guys in this video. I will see all of you in the next one.